Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Marvin's Room 30. We have some fun topics to talk with you about today. We had a great interview last time we talked and wanted to hear a little bit more. But you recently made some videos talking about Neville Goddard and some of his beliefs, and you were really getting dragged hard in some of the comments. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, anybody that has been following this manifestation stuff for a while now, particularly I would say over the past few years, Neville Goddard has developed a cult-like following, and it's no discredit to him. I have no problem with Neville Goddard at all. His works, his teachings are remarkable. They've helped so many people, thousands, if not, excuse me, if not millions. They definitely have helped me. That's for sure. But I've noticed, and I've watched other videos in the past. Typically, I don't watch a lot of videos anymore, but I've watched other videos in the past, and I've noticed a lot of content creators, whether they and it could be people as small as me, as my channel, or it could be people that have a lot more followers than my channel has. I've just noticed that everybody seems to be having a problem with Neville Goddard. Um, his followers, particularly, not Neville Goddard himself, sorry, but his followers.
You think they're placing too much um, emphasis or trust in only his word, or um, do you think they're kind of blinding themselves to other avenues of the law of affirmation and the law of attraction, or what's the crux of the issue here?
You know, I've spent some time trying to figure this out. I can't put my finger on it. Why? Because there has been so many people before Neville that talks about the same thing, whether it's Florence. There's been so many people that have come before Neville, and I just it baffles me why people look at him and think of him as the only way or his way being so right. Like why people are such hardcore Neville Goddard fans. I can't figure it out. Because Abraham Hicks, she's after Neville, but I think she does a great job in breaking down the law of attraction or law of assumption, whatever you want to call it as well. But for some reason, Neville he just gets people riled. He has Christ-like syndrome. He has that effect where the same way Christians may look at Christ, or the same way Muslims may look at Muhammad. You know what I mean? And it causes so much divisiveness amongst the community. And law of attraction and law of assumption is going down the same path of Christianity, and it's going down the same path of Muslims. It's going down the same path as any religion. And in fact, law of attraction, in my opinion, has turned into a religion, even though it's not a religion, because we have these people who are now turning these figures like Neville Goddard into Christ-like figures. And if you go against Neville Goddard, or if you're teaching something else other than Neville Goddard, you're wrong. And I just simply don't agree with that at all.
What do you think are some of the teachings of Neville that should be kept, and what are some of the teachings of Neville that should be um, maybe saved for a rainy day, or maybe changed with the changing of the times and um, the evolution of other great creators, teachers who have added to this discussion?
Um, I think I think the one thing that should 100% be kept with Neville is his whole concept around feeling is a secret. I think that one thing should 100% always be kept, because that principle alone is essentially what all of these people in the past that have come before him have talked about. Whether it was Florence Scovel Shinn, whether it was Jesus, whether whoever it was, whoever you want to name, that feeling that what a man thinks in his heart, so shall he be. You know what I mean? That whole those types of verses in the Bible, life and death are the power of the tongue, all of that type of stuff, in my opinion, is I think what we should keep, 100% from Neville. But the one thing that I don't think we should keep is this whole narrative of, and again, this isn't a Neville problem. This is a Neville Goddard follower problem, and it's not all of his followers. It's some of his followers that are toxic, in my opinion. And I think that we should get rid of the idea that Neville is the only way, because Neville's teachings don't resonate with a lot of people. Contrary to what we may believe, you see people watching his videos and listening to his seminars from back in the day and reading his books, but there's proof and there's evidence of it not working that way, that it should work, um, compared to what people actually how they think it's working in people's lives. Like people read comments and they look at things and they're like, oh yeah, look at this person, it's working for them. They're getting this results. They've got a specific person or they've got money or whatever the case may be. And so they read these comments and they get caught up in these comments. And they think that everybody's getting all these results, but in my opinion, it just doesn't work that way. Like most people that are following this stuff, they're not getting results quickly. They're not getting results in 24 hours or 3 days or a week or even a month. You know, the way some of these clickbait titles make you think. And so I think what needs to be left out is the toxicity behind what to expect when you follow Neville Goddard's work. The toxicity behind what you hear and listen to and what you choose to really believe and think like this is how this stuff is going to work. I think that's what needs to be left behind because it's not realistic.
So you think that people are part of that problem is people are struggling to access their true inner desires, what they really want, and aren't asking for it properly? Is that what you're saying is kind of the where people are getting stuck in Neville's ways?
I think it's that, but I also too I think people are asking for things properly, but I think their time frames are off.
Okay, like they expect it now or
Yeah.
in 24 hours or a
Yeah.
week.
Like so I'll put it to you this way. I think there are people that are asking improperly. I think there are people that are asking for things that they want, that they think they want, but they really don't realize like, oh, I really don't want this. But I also do think that there are people that are asking for things the right way, but they're getting impatient because they think that it should happen on their time frame, and when it does not, they lose hope. They're like, oh, it doesn't work. But it's like, no, it's always working. The law is always working. Law of attraction is always working. It's like gravity. It's always working. Just because you don't see the evidence doesn't mean that your story isn't coming to fruition yet. It just means that the bridge of incidents is still occurring to get you from one side of your manifestation to the other side of your manifestation.
Can you talk more about the Bridge of Incidents? I know you mentioned that in your video last week, but for anybody who's new to following you or new to this community who might not be super familiar with the concept of the Bridge of Incidents or Birds Before Land, can you talk about that a little bit more?
The bridge of incidents and birds before land. It's like one of those things like like how travelers back in the day, like travelers knew if they saw birds, you know, like land was near. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
like on boats and things.
You knew like, oh, life is close.
Okay.
We know that something's here. And bridge of incidents and birds before land is like the same thing. So when you start seeing, when you have a manifestation that you want to acquire, you go from not having it to suddenly having it, right? And everything in between that process from getting to A to getting to B, everything in between that is the bridge of incidents or the birds before land.
So you have to keep your eyes open for
Right.
the birds, or your eyes open for maybe some weird coincidences in your life that aren't necessarily fulfilling your manifestation, but maybe a good sign that it's right around the corner, or that the things that you're doing are working.
Exactly. And too often people think like the bridge of incidents isn't happening. They're doing stuff and they're like, where's my manifestation? But just like I said in my recent video with this person that was manifesting a specific person, it's like the bridge of incidents is always occurring. Even when it doesn't feel like it, even when you think like there's no hope, the bridge of incidents is always occurring. You're always getting better, typically, than you were yesterday. So in this example of this lady who was manifesting a specific person, the bridge of incidents around her, in my opinion, she wanted to get back with whoever her person is, her ex-husband. She didn't see it in her life yet. However, she had about 4 or 5 people around her personally, and she saw all of them start reconciling after she had spent some time doing some revision, doing Ho'oponopono. So to me, what I told her is, I said, all of that's evidence. All of that's evidence that your 3D is changing. All of that is considered the bridge of incidents or the birds before land. Because the fact that it's happening around you means that it's becoming closer to happening to you. And it's just a matter of time before it happens to you. So rejoice and get happy and look forward to like, oh, all of this stuff is going on around me that's showing me my manifestation. It's a matter of time before I'm that person that all of this good is happening to.
So you think people need to live their life a little bit more with their eyes and their heart and their mind open to more things than they expected or asked to experience, almost as a kind of this is part of the chain to get where you want.
Yeah, I think so because I've always said this: people live life like a zombie, in my opinion. But people move through life like zombies. Like they have no awareness. They don't pay attention to the signs and synchronicities and all that type of stuff. And I've talked to people in the past and I've told them this, whether I work with them one-on-one, whether it was family members, I tell people all the time, stop moving through life like a zombie. Like stop being oblivious to things and naive and like pay attention because a lot of us, we don't look for signs that are there. The signs are there, but you're not paying attention to it. Or you might be so stuck in the dumps. You might be so down in the dumps of a situation of a heartache, because that's a big one, of heartbreak or whatever, that you are so blind to the fact of all the good that's going on in your life. And I think we might have mentioned this before, like there's so much, you have all of this stuff over here going on that you're missing what's over here that's actually going right. Because you're so focused on what's over here that you miss the signs of what's going right. You know what I mean? So like, for instance, people always talk about angel numbers, how big angel numbers are. Like, oh, 1111. You know what I mean? If you're so down in the dumps, you might not see that bird before it lands or that bridge of incidents when you're driving on a car, when you're driving and you see the car in front of you has a license plate that says 1111 on it. You miss that because you're not paying attention, because you're so down in the dumps, you're not even thinking about it. You miss how when you look up in the sky, you might see the shape of a cloud and it looks like something that you are trying to manifest. Like these are real, these are signs, and people don't look at these things as signs. They don't pay attention to things as signs. Why are you smiling?
Because I like those examples a lot. I think it's very realistic that, kind of examples of ways that people miss the world around them because they're so stuck in their own brain when here's the world, it's giving you what was on your brain, or
it's all confirmation. That's what angel numbers are. When you see angel numbers, it's basically confirmation. When you see 444 or whatever the case may be, 333, or a lot of people, they'll miss these things on a person's license plate, or they'll miss it. They'll look at the clock and the clock might say angel number, but you're so hurt, you're so stressed, you're so stuck in your own head, like you just mentioned, that you don't see it, you don't pay attention to it, and then you say, oh, there's no bridge of incidents, but no, like that's bridge of incidents. Like you got to retrain your mind to focus on that stuff, because if you don't, you'll miss out on it.
For sure, I think that's really valuable. What other kinds of things can people do to tap into their subconscious or figure out what they really want? I think a lot of people struggle with asking for things that are maybe superficial, and they are not necessarily in alignment of what their brain wants versus what their heart wants, and how can people really get down to the bottom of figuring out on a subconscious level what they're really looking for?
I think that's a great question. I believe meditation and quieting your mind and getting off of potentially social media and not get shiny object syndrome. I think if a person can do that, they can really boil down and figure out what they want. Because in my opinion, a lot of people, they don't really want like half the stuff that they think they want. Whether it's a specific person, and I know a lot of people aren't gonna like hearing that. A lot of people don't realize they really don't want a specific person or that certain specific person. They don't realize they don't want the money, they don't want the cars, they don't want the fame. You know what I mean? They like so many people. Life is filled with so many people that think they want these things, and then they get it, and then they're like, "Yo, I don't want this." Like we look at all these famous people, and famous people are worship. But if you really talk to these famous people and strip back their layers, a lot of them will tell you, "Yo, I hate fame. I don't want this no more. I thought I wanted it, but I really don't want it." What most of us want, in my opinion, is freedom. We want the freedom. That's what we want. We want the freedom that we get from things, from money. But the fame, I think most people can do without the fame. You know what I mean?
The fame is just the only way that people can connect in their brain the points from where they are now to getting lots of money or getting lots of influence. And they're like, the only way I can do that must be to get famous, because I can't imagine any other way that the universe could give me these things that I want.
Right.
Or I want love, and the only way that I can imagine the universe giving me love is to get my SP back, because almost people, it seems, are limiting their imagination from what you are telling me now, kind of limiting themselves into a little box of things that they think that the universe can only give them their want if it's packaged this way.
Sure.
Almost it's a little bit freeing to hear that you can ask the universe for anything and you don't have to have a way figured out for the universe to get you what you want. You can just say, universe, I want unconditional love from somebody.
Right.
And maybe that's not your ex SP, or,
Right.
universe, I want financial freedom.
Right.
And then the universe is like, all right, cool, I'll figure out a way to do that for you. We don't need to get you famous. We will just
Right.
have alternate means.
Right. I think fame, for a lot of people, I think fame is inevitable when you are trying to become successful. Because if you're trying to become successful at something, ultimately you're probably going to become famous in a weird way, even though you try to avoid it. I think a lot of people have no choice but to run into that and say, all right, you know what? As a consequence of me becoming successful, I'm gonna become famous potentially. Like I know that comes with the territory, But there are people out there that are anonymous. They have a ton of money, and they're anonymous. But this is why I want to say to people, like you asked earlier, how can people figure that out? And my whole thing is meditate. Like really figure out and meditate on what you want before you even move forward. Because so many people in this manifesting community, we are trying to manifest things and we don't even realize that's not what our higher self wants. That's what our ego self wants. That's what our carnal, mundane self wants. We want these things, we want these possessions, and then we get these possessions and we realize like, oh, I'm not happy. You hear about these rich people who are on drugs, these multimillionaires and billionaires who are on drugs and realize, yo, I'm not happy. Yo, I'm not with my kids on their birthdays because I gotta work, or I'm not. They have everything in the world, but yet they're still not happy. Why? Because they're placing their happiness in things. The things become their identity. And so when things become your identity, when these things are taken from you, this is when people commit suicide. This is when people go through deep depression, et cetera, because these things become their identity. And so when you manifest, you don't ever want what you manifest to become your identity. You don't want to have your identity around anything in life, essentially. And this is what happens when people are in relationships. Your relationship becomes your identity. So you don't really know who you are potentially. You maybe become your person, or they become you. You know what I mean? So you don't know who you are. You lose your identity outside of that relationship. You don't want people. You're afraid to make decisions because you don't want people to think about you in your relationship in a certain way. And it's just an identity thing. And so, like I'm saying, like people just gotta realize, in my opinion, like figure out before you manifest anything, before you manifest your job, your dream house, your dream relationship, whatever, meditate, figure out what you really want before you move forward, because this will save you a lot of heartache and trouble in manifesting the wrong things. Because when these things show up, you'll think you want it, and then you're like, damn, like I'm not happy. Like, yeah, I have all of this success, but I still feel empty. Why do I still feel empty? Because I was chasing the wrong thing. Because I thought, and this is why I say earlier, get off social media, because you're comparing yourself. A lot of times we're looking at social media thinking like, oh, look at this person's relationship. Me and my girlfriend, we need to do that. You know what I'm saying? Me and my boyfriend, we need to do that. And you fall into the comparison trap, and that's dangerous.
So talking about meditation, what do you recommend for meditation for people?
I think for meditation, I just think simply calming your mind, finding something on YouTube, like listening to your breath, focusing on your breath, or focusing on your heartbeat, silencing your mind. I mean, this is the part of manifesting that a lot of people gloss over because they don't want to do it. Everybody wants to go to the shiny object. Everybody wants to go to, oh, I need to affirm. How do I get my specific person? How do I do this? But the one thing most of us should be doing, in my opinion, is we should be being still. Like the Bible says, there's a verse in the Bible that says, be still and know that I am God. Most of us, in my opinion, from studying and stuff and working with people, most of us should not be doing anything except being still. But we've been taught that action is the way. Action, even with our manifestation, we're being taught, we need to affirm. We need to affirm. Affirmations, visualizations. We need to be doing that all the time, or we're going to miss out on our manifestations. We're not going to get it as fast as we want to. But honestly, in my opinion, we all need to be still. This is how Steve Jobs came up with, remember? This is how Steve Jobs came up with the iPhone. He went to India, right? And meditated, and he got a download. he got a download, and now we have iPhones. Thank God for Steve Jobs meditating and getting that download from the universe. But See, people don't want to do that because that's not the shiny object. And if we would just simply just take 15 to 20 minutes at least a day, if you can't shoot for 30 minutes and then ultimately try to go to an hour, but if we could just sit still and just be still and try to quiet our minds, we would be amazed at what magnets starts to pull in, like what starts to come into our brains, the ideas, the downloads that we're going to get from our higher self, and figuring out what it is that we really truly want. And so that's the big takeaway that I want people to do is to, quiet your mind. Find something on YouTube, whether it's the solfeggio frequencies, meditations, the hertz, 432, the different hertz. Find a meditation, find a chakra meditation. Just listen to it. If you want to do an chant, you know what I mean? If you want to do any of this type of stuff, just do whatever you can. Take some time, multiple times a week, to just quiet your mind. Put on some headphones. If you want to sit in lotus style, If you want to lay down, I know you and I like to lay down when we do our meditations. Just do whatever you can to just tune out the world, focus on your heartbeat or focus on your breath. Try to stop thought. Like Abraham Hicks says, when you stop thought, you raise vibration. When you raise your vibration, you become a magnet to everything. You can become a magnet to the new ideas. You can be the next person that invents an iPhone, whatever, or whatever is going to be better than the iPhone, because however many years from now, there may be something that's 100 times better than the iPhone that we can't even fathom right now. You know what I mean? Like, that could be anybody. But how can these things happen? Meditation.
So I wanted to bring up another controversial topic that I know you've been wanting to do a video on for a little while. But this is the topic of free will. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on free will.
Free will, man. Free will is tricky. Like, free will is... And people hate free will because a lot of people think, like, they tie that in with a specific person type of stuff. But personally, free will is one of those things that I think most people don't really understand it. People like to talk and act like they understand free will. And you hear a lot of Neville Goddard people, followers particularly, they'll tell you that nobody has free will in your reality. You hear them say things like, you're God, you control your reality. Nobody has free will. You can get people to do whatever you want them to do. You know what I mean? But personally, me, I don't know if I'm on that side of the fence. I personally don't. I believe we have free will, but I believe we have free will to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Just like I do believe we can control events potentially and people around us in a sense, but I think there's a line where that stops. You see what I'm saying? Like, I do believe we are God. We can play God, but I believe that at some point that line stops. Because, like, for instance, you think about death, right? Like, most of us, we can't control death. I mean, we could probably control if we wanted to take our own life. We can control that. But we don't know when or how we're going to die. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But by definition, that has to be included in free will as well, right? Like, if I don't know how or when I'm going to die, then that means I don't have free will. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, although I've heard free will being talked about as the decisions that you make in your life, not necessarily about the things that happen to you.
Right.
But it seems like you're coming at this issue from a point of acknowledging that there's certain things that are going to happen in the universe, whether you like them or not.
Right.
That you have freedom in your brain to control the way you act about these things, but you don't necessarily have control over the thing itself happening.
Yeah, it's like, and so, like I said, free will is one of those things. It's one of those things that's very, very tricky in my opinion, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert or pretend to act like I have all the answers. Like, people on YouTube, in my opinion, they're afraid to say that out loud. They're afraid to admit or act like they don't know the answer to something. I don't have the answer to free will 100% of how free will works. A lot of these people, like I was mentioning a little earlier, like follow Neville Goddard, they will try to preach and talk to you and say to you, oh no, free will is, we control our own realities. We control what people do in our realities. We can, like, almost as if it's some like black magic type of stuff. But I do think there is some truth behind that. I do think we could potentially have influence. And I know you and me have had these conversations before where we've talked about you can't get somebody to change. You know what I mean? Like, you can't get a specific person or an ex to change. To some extent, to some degree, I can believe that. But also, too, on the other end, because me being open-minded, I also do believe we can influence a person to change. I do believe that we can have some sort of influence on a specific person to change if we're trying to get them back. You know, it might not be the way that we think that it's going to happen, but I do believe some way, somehow, we can affect that outcome. But that scares a lot of people, because people don't want to be told that free will exists. Because in their minds, if free will exists, that means my specific person won't love me. You know, and that's one of the big fears of people. And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people shoot down the concept of free will. But like I was saying earlier, we have free will, but I think we have free will to a certain extent. Like, we can't control our reality, but we can control our reality to a certain extent. Meaning, you know, like when disasters happen, you know what I mean? Like, was that in your reality? You know what I mean? Those people that died on 9/11, was that in their reality? Did they think something like that was going to happen to them? Was there a collective consciousness around all of those victims that, oh, I'm afraid. Did all those victims collectively have a consciousness of fear? And so they all were in that building one day, and then boom, they all died. Those 3,000 plus people died because they all had an underlying fear. And so that became their reality that day. Like, these are the types of questions that I don't know if a lot of people really peel back the layers and think and try to answer those questions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, so you think that ultimately the energy we put out about a situation and our own thoughts about it is, as far as our free will extends, you can't necessarily change somebody else if they don't want to be changed, because they're over here having the same free will discussion with themselves. You know, like, I can't sit over here and think Marvin's favorite color is blue when you are your own entity over here, and you think, no, that's not true. That's not my reality. My favorite color is white.
Yeah.
Right? But no matter how much I think, you know, I'm trying to manifest or create this reality where your favorite is blue, that's not going to be the case for you, because you're living and breathing your own reality where, you know, you want something, you like something different than that. So I guess what I'm saying is, when free wills of two different people start to clash, you know, you want your SP back, but they don't want you back, or, you know, something along those natures, whose reality is going to win? Or is that part of the fabric that you have to navigate for free will?
Right, exactly.
Sorry if that was a little convoluted there, but, you know, the conversations around free will, I think, inevitably end up being kind of convoluted without,
for sure,
some concrete examples.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but what I would say to that is, and this goes back to that whole multiverse, you know, thing, like we always talked about. And this is something big in the SP community, and the SP community always talks about this. And they always say, you know, oh, there's multiple dimensions out there. There's multiple versions of me. There's multiple versions of you. We get to decide. And everybody always says, I'm going to choose the reality that has my specific person. Right? That's what they always say. They say, I'm going to choose the reality that has me and my specific person together, or married, or whatever scenario they have played out in their head. But what's not talked about is how many people actually have that working out for them. You know what I mean? Like, how many people have changed? How many people have actually 100% gotten their specific person to change, if that's what they were trying to do? And how many of them are still successful in this relationship today, however many months or years later, and did it work?
Yeah, you've talked before about, I think it was Drake. I think that was a fun example you gave about Drake. About how many women in the world want to be with Drake, but in his
Drake,
reality...
I'm sorry to cut you off, but Drake's probably, he was trending on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen that. He was trending. I didn't see it, but apparently, like, there's a video of him out there with his wing out, and everybody's like, oh, now I see what Drake's talking about. Oh, Drake has a baby arm. Oh. So I'm sorry, I just had to put that out there. I'm sure all the chicks out there love that little spill. They probably saw it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, so in this world, who's getting Drake, you know? If there's 100 different women who are trying to manifest a relationship with him, is kind of, you know, where this example is going. Which of these ladies is winning out in this world? In
this world. That's the whole hook. Like, that's the whole key. If there are, and I remember somebody said something to me one time, and they were like, everybody gets him. And I'm like, how? Like, in this 3D realm, how does everybody can't get Drake? He's one person in this realm. If there's other dimensions out there, okay, cool. But we're talking about this realm. Who gets Drake? If all these women in the world want Drake, who's going to be the one to get the ring or to get him to say, I'm committed to you? Who's that going to be? And this is where the free will argument comes into play. And I'm saying to people, like, free will, like, what does it really mean? Because Drake has free will to choose whichever woman he wants to choose. He's not going to choose you just because you've been living in the end of your end scene and saying affirmations like, Drake's my baby dad, Drake's my baby dad, Drake's my baby dad. Like, you really think you gonna manifest a relationship with Drake by sitting here walking around saying, Drake's my baby dad, Drake's my baby dad, Drake's my baby dad. I'm in a relationship with Drake. I'm in a relationship with Drake. Drake loves me. Drake texts me all the time. Drake wants to marry me. Like, there's people out here really trying to manifest famous people doing shit like this. Like, I know because I've talked to some of them before. It sounds crazy, but people are really out here trying to manifest like celebrities and being in relationships with celebrities. Like, people are out here trying to manifest that shit.
And so what should their manifestation be to kind of line up with what you're saying about free will and getting what you want and, you know, really manifesting what's in your heart? What should these people be, you know, affirming to themselves or asking for instead?
What the person that I think the person that I have heard talk about this the best is Florence Scovel Shinn, I believe. Because Florence Scovel Shinn, she always tells you you're going to get, first of all, she always tells you to like work on you, right? She tells you like work on yourself, right? And then she tells you to say affirmations like, I'm going to get this or something better under grace in a perfect way. Meaning that I'm going to get this in a way that's going to be perfect for me. If I'm supposed to get this guy over here, then I'm going to get this guy. If I'm supposed to get this woman over here, then I'm going to get this woman. And if I don't, I'm going to get something better. And it's going to be under grace, and it's going to be in a perfect way. I think Florence Scovel Shinn, she really hits the nail on the head with that when she talks about that and manifesting a specific person. Because there was a couple examples in her book where a woman comes to her and she's like, oh, you know, I want this guy, I want this guy. And Florence is basically like, why do you want this guy? Like, do you think this guy is really it? Do you really think you want this specific person? Obviously, she didn't say that specific person at the time because this is early 1900s or whatever it was, you know what I'm saying? But she's like, do you really want this guy? Like, you may not want him. And then, sure enough, as time went on, the lady was like, you know what? Such and such doesn't seem so interesting to me like he used to. You know what I mean? And I think what happens when people focus on themselves, like this is the real way, in my opinion, to get a specific person. This is like the real way to get any specific person back that you want to get. It's to focus on you. When you focus on you and your self-love and your self-concept gets to a level, like you become a magnet. You will literally become a magnet to so many great things. And from there, your person is just going to match that. Whoever you're supposed to be with, naturally, they're just going to come. And whoever's not supposed to be in your life is going to naturally fade away. This is what happens when people do the work on themselves. And but again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This goes back to you have to be aware. You have to be paying attention. You can't be moving through life like a zombie. Mm-hmm. You can't be oblivious. You have to pay attention to the signs, the birds before lands, the birds of incidents. One of the symptoms when you start to elevate and you do the work on yourself, one of the symptoms when you start to love yourself, one of the symptoms is people will naturally fade from your life and then people will naturally come into your life. That's one of the big symptoms that people miss out on when they're doing this work and becoming a better person and elevating. You know what I mean? And people don't realize that. People always say, how can I get rid of this person? Or how can I attract such and such? When you do the work on yourself, that stuff naturally takes care of itself. You don't have to figure out how to get rid of this person over here. You don't have to figure out how to cut this friend off. You don't have to worry about any of that type of stuff. You don't have to worry about, how can I get this person to come back? No, when you focus on yourself and your self-love, self-concept, that stuff takes care of itself. The people that need to come back into your life are going to come back. They're going to naturally hit you up, naturally apologize, naturally whatever. The people that are not supposed to be on your level, they're not supposed to be in your life, they're going to naturally fade away. It has no choice.
So if people, that sounds really amazing. And to just let the universe bring the people into your life that are supposed to be here, including potentially new people that you haven't even thought about yet. But why do you think, knowing this, why do you think so many people kind of reject that way and choose instead to try and manifest their old ex back or their old SP back or their old job back or, these things that aren't necessarily in alignment with their idea for making their life bigger and better if they're just, pulling back from the past?
because I think because they don't believe in free will, and because they believe that this world that we're in is a simulation. You hear that term thrown around so many times from different LOA content creators. I've heard it in the past. I don't really hear it anymore because I don't really watch a lot of creators anymore. But you hear people say things like, "We live in a simulation." You know, this life that we live in is not real. You know, and then people start to believe that, and they're like, "Oh wait, you know what? This isn't real. Oh, this is a game." You know what I mean? But again, to a certain extent, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like we hear these theories, and we hear these I don't know, people give these soliloquies and they just spew out stuff. And I don't think some of the viewers really understand, like, you gotta use your common sense and understand, like, yes, we do live in a simulation, or yes, this is a game, or yes, you can control your reality, or to a certain extent. At some point, you have to realize, like, okay, there are certain things that I cannot control. I cannot control certain things. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I think people, like you said, like you just mentioned, this is why they try so hard to get an X-Pac, because they believe they can, because they don't believe that anybody has free will in their reality. They believe that whatever they want in their reality is going. But at the same time, so many things have happened to so many people that they probably didn't want to happen. So if you had free will, then why did those things happen? You could have controlled it. You should have controlled it, but you didn't. Right? And even after people learn about LOA, they still don't control these things. They still can't control. Like people control, like they'll realize, like, okay, I have to control the words that I say, the feelings that I feel. But how come I wake up tomorrow and I have a flat tire? Or how come somebody stole money out of my bank account? You know what I mean? How come, like, people think like these bad things won't happen to them because of this whole free will talk. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, and I also, you know, after talking with you for a long time on this topic, to me, it also seems like people lack imagination. You know, they can't envision something for themselves, for their future, that's better than what they have right now, or different than what they have in the past, you know? So when they're trying to think about, oh, I want a SP who loves me the way I deserve to be, you know, in the best possible way, they have no imagination to pull something more brilliant from the universe or from the simulation that they, you know, believe in, or any of these things. And, you know, so kind of their brain just defaults back to like, oh, yeah, well, this person from your past is easy for our brain to come up with an image of and to attach a personality to, and we can create this whole story in our brain. That is almost no work for us. Whereas if you're starting from scratch or trying to tap into your subconscious and your heart and what you really want, it's more work that you have to put into create something new for yourself.
That's a very great point. You just made me think of something. I never thought of that. I think that's a great point in people being, I guess, if you want to say lazy manifestors, lazy imaginers. Like people, like you said, people don't want to brainstorm. People don't want to. But we've also talked about this too, like how draining it is to think.
Yeah, and how nerve-wracking it is to ask the universe for things that you're not confident that you might get, or that you don't know if you deserve. Right,
100%. I think that's a great point. And it is easier a lot of times to stick, like you say, like the term goes, stick to the devil you know and not the devil you don't know. Right? I don't know if you've heard that term before, but I've heard, and I might have butchered that just now. I don't know if I said that the right way, but basically it's like you stick to what you know. And so most people, they stick to what they know because they are afraid of the unknown, like you said, or they don't want to think about the unknown. They don't want to take that energy to try to think or construct a new vision for their life, a new relationship for their life, because I know this person, all I know is this job. And this is the reason why a lot of people that get older, this is why a lot of people that are older have a hard time starting businesses or starting and doing whatever they want to do, is because you've been doing something for 10, 15, 20 years. All of a sudden, somebody's telling you, or you're trying to convince yourself, hey, stop. I don't want to do this no more. I want to, or not even that, just retired people. You look at how retired people behave and act after they've been working for so long, and then they stop working, and it's like, man, like, I'm not working no more. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? And we've kind of talked about that. Like, when you retire, when you stop working your brain, you die, essentially. You know what I mean? It's a story about Trump. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people don't like Trump out there, but I remember hearing Trump tell a story, and he was talking about one of his guys in finance that he knew, a banker or whatever. And he was talking about how the banker had gotten so old. He had gotten so old very quickly after he stopped working. He was like, yo, Donald told him, was like, yo, when you stop working, he was like, don't stop working. He's like, when you stop working, all of these people that were calling you, etc., they're not going to be calling you no more. They're not your friends the way you think they're your friends. He's like, when you retire, you're gonna realize how lonely you're gonna be and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? And so this guy went ahead and retired, and Donald was right. Like this dude got nobody called him, and within a year, Trump was saying he got so old in a year, and it's the same concept. Like when you stop, you die. When you stop thinking, when you stop working, when you're not utilizing your brain, this is what happens. And it's the same thing with imagination, which is why it's important for us, to your point, to not be lazy with this manifestation stuff, to not be afraid to maybe think of a new scene, maybe think of a new life, maybe think of a new specific person, not to be afraid to imagine yourself with somebody better than, because there's billions of people on earth, you know what I mean? And I know some people are afraid to hear that, but the truth is there are billions of people on earth. Yes, you could probably to a certain extent help recreate the person that you're with. If you want to go that route, hey, go for it. That's probably going to take a lot more energy than it would be to think of somebody new. But instead of trying to recreate your specific person from that aspect, what I would probably do is I would probably just imagine yourself feeling loved on the highest level, feeling loved and cherished on the highest level. And then whoever that man or woman is that's supposed to give you that feeling will naturally just show up when you feel that feeling of love.
I like hearing you say that, because I think I speak for probably many people when I say that when I try and do visualizations or affirmations, a lot of times I get caught up in the detail work of it.
Yeah.
And trying to picture, okay, my dream person is going to look like this,
Right.
or say things like this, or
Right,
my
right.
dream job is going to be in this field.
Right.
And you kind of lose the really important piece of the visualization, which is what you just mentioned, of that feeling of
Yeah.
being loved, or the feeling of being accomplished at and respected in your place of work, or
Right.
feeling content with your life, the way that you're living it. I mean, it's amazing how easy it is to overlook that feeling when when your eyes and your senses and your brain are so used to creating a story around that. And I think a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes it can put some blinders on so that you aren't able to see the bridge of incidents or the birds before land when they show up in your life, because you're trying to visualize these details that
Right.
aren't necessarily a part of the big story of what you want to manifest for yourself. You know,
Right.
it doesn't matter if your SP has blonde hair or
Right.
is a brunette,
Right.
Doesn't matter if your job is 10 minutes from home or 30,
Right.
those things I think are really trip a lot of people up.
I agree.
Keep them from the full spectrum of what they could imagine.
Yeah.
If you imagine from your feelings instead of from from your brain.
And you know what feeling a lot of people run from, but they should be running towards when they do their visualizations? A lot of people, like you said, they get caught up in the scenes, but a lot of people don't necessarily get a certain feeling from scenes that they create, right? But the one feeling that people should be reaching for is relief.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, when they're trying to manifest a specific person, they're so focused on thinking about the feeling of love. But what we got to realize and understand is love is fleeting. Those emotions come and go. Like most people are not always going to feel that feeling of love when they're with somebody. You know what I mean? But just because you don't feel that feeling 24/7 doesn't mean that the love is gone. Doesn't mean like, oh, there's nothing there. There's no spark anymore. And this is something that a lot of people don't realize. It's like, oh, I don't feel that feeling that I had a year ago or 2 years ago. It's like that feeling is going to go. Most people aren't going to keep that feeling up for 20 years straight or 30 years straight. Like
Almost like talking about the honeymoon phase
Yeah.
of a relationship.
yeah, infatuation. You're not going to have that feeling for 30. Like there might be some couples out there, what we call the term 1 in a million, that can maintain that infatuation stage for 30 years or 50 years. You see those old people like, oh, I just love him like it was yesterday. We're still in love like we just met yesterday. Nothing's changed. And they're literally still doing stuff as if it was the first time they ever met. Like those, don't get me wrong, those stories are beautiful. But realistically, how many couples do you think are like that? Not a lot. You know what I mean? That can have that type of feeling or whatever. But instead of thinking about that type of feeling and love, I think what we should reach for is, I think when people do their visualizations, whether you're visualizing dream job, money, relationship, whatever, you should reach for the feeling of relief. Because think about how you would feel if you had your specific person right now. Think about how you would feel if you had financial freedom, if you had passive income. You would feel relief. What does relief feel like to you? That's the feeling when you visualize. and you do your sats, your state akin to sleep at night, or you do your affirmations, think about feeling relief. When I do visualizations and I think about things myself, I don't necessarily think about a number like, oh, I got $200 million. I don't go for that thought, or I don't go for that affirmation. I go for the relief of, oh, it feels so good to not worry about bills. It feels so good. The relief of knowing that I can buy whatever, or I can buy, you know what I mean? Not putting a name on it, but just go for that feeling of relief.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because it almost goes hand in hand with meditation. You know, when you meditate, you're looking for that feeling of relief in your mind from your day-to-day worries, from all of these thoughts that are maybe really rapidly coming into your mind, all the things in your life that are on your to-do list.
Yeah.
And meditating is taking, that 30 minutes or 1 hour to yourself as a period of almost a break for your brain, or a relief from this constant influx that you experience. And so it's just interesting that hearing you say that relief is what you focus on for your affirmations and your visualizations, but also it's a big focus for when you meditate. And it's just interesting to see that thread really follow through a lot of different tools from Law of Attraction.
Because that's what you want. Think about it. That's what we all want. We all want relief. Whatever we're going through in our lives, whether it's a job we don't like, whether it's a specific person doing something we don't like, whether it's a new specific person, we want that feeling of relief that the desires are going to bring to us. So if you want a specific person, if you want money, why do you want these things? You want these things because the relief you're going to feel from it once you get it, once it happens. So that's the feeling you got to go for, the feeling of relief. Like, oh man, I got somebody to come home to. That feels good. That's what that feels like. You know what I mean? And when you get relief, a consequence of feeling relief is controlled emotions, right? And so a lot of people, they struggle with controlling themselves. They struggle with controlling their emotions. Most people, in my opinion, they don't control their emotions. Their emotions control them. And it shouldn't be like that in life, especially when you're a manifestor, especially when you know about this law of attraction, law of assumption stuff. That's level one, in my opinion, is learning to master your emotions. If you can't master your emotions, then you're a slave to your emotions. Your emotions you're gonna be acting out. You're gonna be reacting and not responding, because reacting is habitual. Responding actually takes thought. Responding actually takes time for you to, before I open my mouth and say X, Y, and Z, let me stop and get my thoughts together and respond to this person or situation, circumstance, and not react. Because most people, we're reactive. We're taught to react. You know what I mean? We don't sit there and think. And this is what happens when people meditate. When people meditate, they learn to control their emotions. They don't become a slave to their emotions anymore. And this is what happens when you reach for that feeling of relief, is you don't become a slave to your situation of circumstances. Is you start to, okay, what would it feel like right now if my car was already fixed? What would it feel like right now if I had financial freedom? That relief. What would it feel like if I had my perfect husband or my perfect wife? Relief. That's the feeling that I'm going for. Relief.
So, for all the ordinary folks out there trying to practice Law of Attraction and get this feeling of relief when they're doing their affirmations, can you give some examples of a good progression to bridge that gap between what your reality is in the moment and what all of the wonderful things that you can imagine for your future? So kind of, for example, like right now, you might not believe if you say an affirmation that my SP is going to it's coming back to me as going to love me forever. You might not necessarily believe that now, but what kind of progressions in your affirmations can get you to that place?
When you take your desires off a pedestal. I think so many of us, we put our desires up here. Mm-hmm. And when you put your desires up here, it's almost as if you're worshiping. It's almost as if it's this goal that you can't obtain. You know what I mean? That you can't attain. So it's like, I think if people come down, you got to look at it, manifesting a specific person or anything, it's just like drinking water.
Okay.
right? Like I know I can go to the fridge and I can just get some water. Like I'm not fearful. I'm not afraid of it. You know what I mean? It's so easy that I can just. But see, we make a lot of this stuff harder than it has to be because we get in our own way. So I think if you stop making your desires so important, stop giving yourself deadlines like, oh, I need to, I need to get this thing by, I need to get my specific person by, and this could be a really big problem for people that are older. Because when you're older, a lot of people feel like they're running out of time. Mm-hmm. And so, and this is a big part of the reason why I always tell people get rid of the concept of time. Like, think about how much longer people would live if we didn't know how old we were. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, think about somebody that's like 70 or 80. Think about if that person believed and acted and thought that they were like 40 or 30. They wouldn't have the fear and anxiety they do around dying alone potentially, if they are alone. So our age alone is what causes people so much anxiety. You hear people all the time, oh, I'm 30, oh, I'm 31, I'm still single, oh, I'm 31, I still don't have kids, oh, I'm 40 and I don't, fill in the blank, just fill in the blank. Age causes people anxiety. Knowing, which is why the saying ignorance is bliss is true. Like when you're ignorant or you don't know, you're happy because you don't know and you don't have the stress and anxiety because you're not aware of a certain stimuli. But
like I'm 40 years old, I'm supposed to own a home right now.
Right.
You don't have the anxiety that, okay, I'm not a homeowner now.
Right.
So you can change that dialogue in your brain.
Yes.
To one of, I kind of like this example, so I want to run with it. To something like, I have safety and security in my future. I mean, what would an affirmation be that you would maybe tell yourself or suggest to somebody that came to you with a problem of, maybe a fear-based problem of not owning a home and wanting one? What kind of affirmations,
Well, before we get to the affirmations, what I would say is, I would tell people to do what I just said and to look at time differently, to look at everything differently. That's step one. Step one is to realize that everything is not as it seems. Step one is to realize that time isn't what you think it is. Time is not necessarily real. It's real, but it's real to a certain extent. Time isn't the 24-hour clock. So in order for a person to get to that level to where their affirmations work, they have to look at things differently and not get so caught up in social media and understand and like look at numbers. You know what I mean? And understand, like, so many of us, we think we're behind. So we have to understand before we even get to the affirmation part, we have to look and realize, most people in their 20s aren't owning homes. We have to get to the other part. Most people in their 30s still aren't owning homes. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Most people, men don't hit their earning potential until they're like late 40s or 50s. You know what I'm saying? The average person in this country is only earning 40, 50 grand, somewhere around there. So before we even get to affirmations, we got to remind ourselves of that. We're jumping the gun a lot of times and we start to think, and this is why I said take everything off of a pedestal. This is why I'm saying this is part one, is to take everything off of a pedestal and really look at the numbers to help get rid of that anxiety around whatever your goals, etc. are. This is why we got to get rid of all of that stuff first and look at things holistically. Understand, most people aren't homeowners. Most people are still renting, especially in this economy. Most people, I don't care if you're 20s, I don't care if you're 30s. Social media, everybody's not out here being a multimillionaire. Everybody's not out here owning a home. A lot of people are struggling. No matter if you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, there's people that are struggling. So we have to put that in perspective. And then once you get that into perspective, what you can do now is start to, when you say your affirmations, go general. So, and again, this is different for everybody, but some people can get away with saying things like, they'll tell you to affirm like, oh, I own a home, I own a home, I own a home, I own a home. I don't go that route. I would never, subscribe to that type of affirming with people that I work with, just affirming, like, I own a home, I own a home, I own a home, just to manifest the home into your life. I would go more general, something that Abraham Hicks talks about. I would go more general. So I would say something along the lines of, I love how every day that goes by, I'm getting closer and closer to owning my home. Mm. I love the fact that every day that goes by, I'm closer and closer to owning my dream house. So saying I have my dream house now versus saying I'm getting closer to my dream house, there's no resistance in that second statement. The first statement, there's resistance. I own my dream house. I love my dream. Now, again, some people can get away with that. Some people can say, I own my dream house, I own my dream house, and then it show up very quickly or whatever the case may be. But for most people, in my opinion, from what I've seen, they can't do it that way. They have to say something along the lines of the second statement I said, meaning, I love how every day passes, I get closer and closer to my dream. my dream house. I love how every day that passes I get closer and closer to my SP. Instead of saying I'm with my SP, I love how every day that passes I'm getting closer and closer to my specific person. I love how I'm becoming a better person for my specific person with every day that passes. Go general. Don't go specific. Go general. So I would say affirmations like that in order to help somebody. And you can fill in the blank with whatever your affirmations may be, but those are the types of affirmations that I would reach for. Affirmations that take away the resistance of you having something, but knowing like, okay, I'm working towards it. I'm on my way there. I'm so happy that, I'm getting closer to my dream car. I'm so happy that every day that goes by, I get closer and closer to my dream job. I'm so happy that
the universe is working to deliver this to me.
Yeah, I'm so happy that and see, there will be some people that tell you don't say it like that because you're putting it into the future. If you say affirmation that way, they'll say, "Oh, you're putting it into the future, so it'll always be in the future." No, I don't believe that because there's no rules with this manifestation stuff, and it's not you putting it into the future. It's that feeling. It's helping you create that feeling. So even if you do say it as if it's going to happen in the future, it's giving you hope, and it's still giving you that feeling of, I'm going to have this one day. So it's still doing the job.
Well, I will have to lay down tonight, work on my affirmations, my meditations, and my visualizations, and see if I can use a couple tricks that from this talk today. But thank you very much for being here, for giving some good insights on how to figure out what you really want, how to get what you really want, and am I wrong for saying also, just as on a final note, that kind of what you were just talking about is not one size fits all for any of these techniques, but it's from what I've heard, you work a lot with people about their individual situations, coming to them, helping them with personalized affirmations or personalized visualizations, and is that still something that you do? Are you still a life coach in that way? How can people get in touch with you?
Just my channel.
Okay.
Follow all my social medias. I have the YouTube, I have the Instagram, I have the TikTok, I have Facebook, Marvin's Manifestation Room on Facebook, and also I have my personal Facebook, Marvin Daniels, my last name. So if you follow me on YouTube, you'll be able to get in touch with me with all my other platforms. So that's not an issue.
Okay, wonderful. And so they can reach out for one-on-one coaching potentially,
just shoot me an email. Just shoot my email is always in the description box below. So just shoot me an email or go to Instagram and shoot me a direct message, which people have done both, and we could set something up and see what you need help with.
Perfect. Thank you so much. For anybody who is new, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Marvin's Room. For any of our returning subscribers, returning watchers, thank you so much. Appreciate another week of having you with us, and hopefully we will see you again next week.
Yes, sir. We out.